The reason I decided to do this research on school boards is because when you look nationwide, our scores don't seem to be improving. We're spending millions and millions and even billions of dollars on the people at the bottom. We're trying to fix our teachers. That's well and good. But in the long run, you can't fix the people at the bottom without fixing the people at the top. So, having been a school superintendent, I've been a school board member as well, and I can see this firsthand. I've seen it, and some of the settings are not very pretty out there, but unfortunately, that's in a select few. We really have some great boards operating in our country today, and we've seen those. That is really, really encouraging to us. So why did we do the research? We started out, number one, trying to look at board members' perceptions of how they were doing. And that was a mistake, because with low-performing school districts, you're not going to find out what you're looking for. They're not going to tell you what you want to know, and we've proven that without a shadow of a doubt. So when we saw that they were telling us what they thought we wanted to hear, then I followed that up with the people so-called lower than that, like principals and assistant principals, to find out if they agreed. They used the same survey instrument that the boards used to see if they agreed with how the boards rated themselves, and we found just the opposite. So there was a big disconnect on the board's perception of their own behavior and what the administrators in the schools were perceiving the boards, and then that was a sign for us right there that something wasn't right. But the problem with this is, and why research of this nature hasn't been done, is very complex, because to find out what they do, you have to go see what they do. You have to actually observe it. So we developed a rubric for observing meetings, and we started out trying to look online at school boards across the country to look at their board meetings online. But what we started to realize was that only the good systems were putting their meetings online. Well, that's not rocket science. If your system's not performing well and your boards aren't behaving adequately, well, you don't want your board meetings to be on a website where the whole world can see it. So what we had to do then, to see what those who were low performing were doing, we had to actually go see them. That was an eye-opening experience for us. That really provided momentum, and we started seeing that boards are trained. They go to all sorts of training. Every state has requirements of board member training. We're finding that it's not the knowledge. They know what the key works of school boards are. They know what their role is in budget planning. They know what their role is in policy making. But the problem is their behaviors don't necessarily go along with what they know. It's not their knowledge, it's how they behave. And we're seeing some really earth-shaking things out there. For an example, we were in a meeting in the southeastern part of the country about a month ago, and in this meeting, it started well. They had an interest group there, and you could see the meeting unfolding before your very eyes. The meeting started out very well, but the special interest group was there. They wanted a football stadium named after a former coach there. And all of us in this business realize how much of a problem this could be. So when the group made their presentation, they did a good job. The board did a good job of listening. And then the board president turned to the superintendent and says, well, what is your thinking on this? The superintendent says, well, it's a very good idea. We appreciate the group coming, but we do not have a policy on naming our football stadiums after private individuals. So I'm suggesting that we just table this item, and then I will form a committee and we will look at it. Excellent, excellent. Everything was going good, but here is what separated the good board from the negative board. The board fell, they felt the pressure, and they started to fold. Board members in good meetings do not fold when they see a potential hazard, because what was happening here, they were undermining the superintendent and the entire system. And as soon as the superintendent said that, one of the people who were spokespeople from the group started saying, well, I figured you would put us off. You always do this. You never give us an opportunity, and we need to show some kind of respect to this coach because he's been so much to the school system. And then once that individual started, the tempo changed. That one of the board members, obviously representing the district where these people were from, started to back up and started to give some reasons on why they should name the stadium after that individual. After he had already heard the superintendent say there was no policy, we need to move on with it and establish a policy. Good boards follow those. They understand that. This board member got really intimidated by the special interest group in the meeting, and one particular board member looked back at the superintendent and says, "But we can do something if we want to." The superintendent says, "Yes, we can, but we need a policy. We need something to go by." And that board member looked very sternly, with very, very determined eyes, and said, "But you don't understand. We are the board, and we can do anything we want to do. All I need are 2 more votes to go along with mine, and I'm making a motion right now that we accept and name this stadium, and he got 2 more votes." Board member catastrophe, board meeting, dead on arrival. And after the meeting, you could see school administrators, you could hear them saying things like, "Well, our superintendent can't control the board." This begins the undermining. But fortunately, all boards don't operate that way. They don't do that. But the direction of the system is determined by the boards. So when we started going into the boards meetings and started observing, we started picking up nonverbal cues. We started picking up behaviors that were detrimental to the operation of that school. And then, as a result of all those 150 plus meetings we were in, we started observing that the more negative the behavior the school boards behaved, the lower the academic achievement of their districts. Boards who behave positively, who provide leadership, their districts reflect that. Boards, on the other hand, that behave negatively, the district scores reflect that. We're trying to fix the people at the bottom. Now, it is a sign of insanity to think that this district is going to be better by training teachers and administrators. That will help. But if they don't get the support of the people at the top, they won't stay with you. That's why the turnover rate, that's why the national turnover rate of school superintendents is so low. It's because superintendents can't stay there. They cannot continue this because boards make it so uncomfortable for them. So we have pretty well broken the code on the board member effectiveness. And what we found, it is how they behave. The board behavior is killing us. And an answer to this, and I've observed this as being a school superintendent and a school principal and all these kinds of things, and as a college instructor of people in educational leadership positions, why do some people perform better than others? It's not the knowledge they have. It's how they implement that knowledge. Boards are going to have to do a better job of implementing what they know. Yes, this accountability movement nationwide is really posing a problem. It's posing a problem because we're looking for someone to blame for our failing performance. And it usually starts at the teacher level. It's usually where it starts. So there's plenty of accountability to go around for teachers, for school administrators, but there's very, very little accountability focused at school boards. And ultimately, they're going to have to be put on the radar if we look for school improvement for a whole model. We've known for a long time that boards need to behave properly. All people in the educational leadership business understand that. But we haven't had the data to back up the reason for that. Now we can say, yes, it does matter. Here's what the data shows. Here's what the research shows. The more negatively you act, the lower your district performance. We have that. For the first time, we have it right before our very eyes. Sure, they know the key works of school boards. They know those things, but those things are not research-based. And we know now without a shadow of a doubt there's this direct correlation between student achievement and board behavior. So we know that. So what are we going to do with this? Well, I'm going to be presenting the findings to the National School Boards Association's annual conference this spring. We're going to be talking about that. But some things that we saw when we went in, we saw the training in place, but we saw the behavior contradicting the training that they had. And we were finding this link: as the more negatively a board acted, the lower their school performance. Board members were sitting there with these nonverbal cues. They don't realize that a certain look they have sends out negative connotations. They don't realize that a frown they make, a rolling of the eyes, temper tantrums, turning their back to the speaker, personal agendas, making faces when people talk. They don't realize this. Great leaders don't do that. See, that's the missing link. Boards are trained in all their responsibilities, but they're not trained as leaders. Boards are leaders. They are prime leaders. And it's unfortunate, but you go in a lot of communities and a lot of people don't even know their board member's name. And how unfortunate, because they know their sheriff's name, they know other key elected officials, but I'm telling you, the board members are the most important people appointed or elected from a district. So a public awareness is going to have to be focused on how you pick good board members. Now, we have data out there on that, but we've got to get the public looking more toward behavior. Now, the reason why a lot of training isn't being done in this area, it's easy to teach somebody something, but it's hard to teach them to get to change their behavior, because a person won't change their behavior unless they see a need to change that behavior. That's what we've got to get in their training components of this need to change that behavior, because for the first time, we have the data that says if you don't change your behavior, your results will be dismal. That should be reason enough if you're going to serve on a school board. We did not see any difference between an elected and appointed board member. We did not look for that. I get asked this question all the time: which boards acted the most positively? Well, we saw it both ways, so we couldn't point to that. Also get asked the question, did we see a negative acting board that did not perform at the extreme bottom level? We did see a couple, only a couple, but in those instances, the superintendent was so strong that they were able to kind of help guide the board through the process, but the board listened to the superintendent. The superintendent had lots of credibility. That helped tremendously because the staff knew the superintendent controlled the situation. And in those instances, you can see it. But it's unfortunate that there are not many of those instances out there. Now, what the public perceives as a good school board member probably differs from what we perceive as a good school board member. The role of board members are changing. Society is changing those roles, and we're seeing that. For example, when I was superintendent, if someone had asked me, what do you consider a good board member? And my answer would be, someone to go along with my recommendation and my policies and my actions and things like that. In other words, rubber stamp what I was doing. You ask a lot of superintendents, boards that rubber stamp, superintendents like that, that's easy. But let me tell you, with society like it is today, that can be the kiss of death. If you're rubber stamping, that can be the kiss of death. Good school board members lead. They have to be good leaders. They do what good leaders do. You go into high-performing boards, and what a pleasure it is to sit there. You see leadership. Do you see any criticism going on in it? Yeah, these boards don't necessarily agree with everything, but they do it in a way that they don't tear down people. They do it in a way that they make their people feel very good. Do you have some boards not agreeing with their superintendent on some issues? You bet you do. They're positive boards, but they do it in a way that's professional. They state the reasons for it. They move on. I alluded to the board that we saw where they were naming the stadium after an individual. Good boards do not cave in under pressure. They don't do that. So these nonverbal cues that we're not teaching these boards are more important than what they're saying. You see it every day. And we wonder why superintendents can't make a big impact. Is because once the staff sees a crack in the armor, once they see boards making these indifferent faces, making these contemptuous faces, making these critical faces, making these faces that illustrate that they're not going along with the superintendent, then the staff then starts believing that superintendent won't be there very long, or the superintendent's not going to be able to put through major initiatives because the board's not going to go along with them. So they start easing back. and then they start looking for someone new. They love high turnover because it keeps them in flux that they're not able to produce anything. But when a staff sees the superintendent and the board on the same page, your results are going to start increasing. They're going to start increasing because superintendents have been trained in the school business, board members have not. But what the superintendents do is they lead their boards in the policy and the educational arena, but good boards provide leadership in seeing that it's done. So you say organizations like McGrail, they have proven that leadership matters from the principal level, from the superintendent level, in all areas, that leadership does matter, and there's data to support that. But now, see, boards have been left out of that research. But now the data is supporting the fact that leadership must be provided at the top to fix the bottom. That's why many of our low-performing states never move. Your systems will be good when everybody is working in tandem to make it happen. A lot of people are saying, well, we have high teacher turnover. Wonder why. Why do you think they have teacher turnover? We cannot keep our good teachers. Well, wonder why. Or we cannot attract good teachers. Well, it's your reputation that's killing you. We're paying teachers right now. Some states are even doing, if they think the higher ACT scores, we're getting smarter group of teachers coming out. That's fine. Most of those aren't going into the low-performing systems to start with. Those that do go into the low-performing school systems aren't going to stay long because good teachers won't stay long with bad managers. People don't leave their jobs because they don't like their job. They leave their jobs because of their bosses, the people. So if their bosses at the top aren't on the same page, it's not going to work for them. It's simply not going to work for them. I just wish we could mandate excellence and make our school boards good, or make our teachers good, or make our school leaders good. But you cannot mandate excellence. And sooner or later, we're going to realize that the only thing you can mandate is mediocrity. Excellence doesn't come from the outside in, it comes from the inside out. That's what we're trying to do in with our boards, of realizing that the greater leaders that you are inside, you're able to project that on the outside, and the more of this that's illuminated and projected, it catches on and it spreads like a virus. People catch on to it and saying that our school systems they're turning around because we're getting this good leadership. But communities are going to have to get more involved. Now, as I said, I'm going to be presenting this to the National School Boards Association, and I will be sending you some more of these little video clips, not this long, but outlining to you some of the data that we found, what we really found into this. So 2 things I want you to take away from this, and 2 things I want you to remember, is it does matter how school boards behave. It does matter. So when board members show up, when they act rudely, they're destroying the infrastructure of that school system. Superintendents have to sit there, they have to take this month or twice a month, month after month after month. All the hard work they do out there trying to get a school improvement model in place, some of the comments, some of the behaviors will undermine it and kill it before it ever leaves, dead on arrival. That's what happens every day. So it does matter how boards behave, and test scores are directly correlated with how boards behave. The research now is clear that boards behaving negatively are going to see negative student achievement. You've got some board meetings going on right now. If students in the classrooms behave that way, they would be expelled or suspended. And we expect our students to behave in the proper decorum, and on the other hand, we'll have a public meeting and people will come in to see that, and they'll see behavior they would not believe. But board members, like the one said we saw, we're the board. We can do anything we want to do. And if that's the philosophy of your board, or boards that you're dealing with right now, school improvement is going to be a long road for you. Thank you.